Craig, thank you. Let's take a legal deep dive into this case. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud. Josh, your reaction to the jury's decision?
Well, it seemed appropriate given the circumstances, to be sure. So they did find the death penalty on 6 of the 8 counts. So what does that mean? Well, they did leave out 2. But what that tells me was that their decisions were deliberate. They considered all of the aggravating factors and the mitigating factors, and they said that it applied to 6 but not the 8 counts, which is fine. The 2 counts they didn't find for, they're still going to get the death penalty regardless of the fact they didn't find it for 2 of the victims.
And Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, she was even referring to him as evil, and that this was just punishment for him. When it comes to the death penalty, what was it about this case that made it obviously just?
Well, just is a term of art, but in the legal field, it's actually kind of defined. So just is whatever the jury decides, whether it's a conviction or it's an acquittal, that is considered just. Now here, justice is the death penalty because the jurors in this case, they found that beyond a reasonable doubt, that the prosecution proved at least one aggravating factor that outweighed any mitigating factors for 6 of the 8 victims. So legally speaking, that is what we consider just.
So I'm thinking about the families, and when will he actually be put to death?
Well, these cases, death penalty cases, certainly take a long time.
And
years.
why is that?
Well, years, if not decades. It's because of the appellate process. So the case now goes in the hands of the lawyers, and it's going to have to go through the Court of Appeals, then to the Arizona Supreme Court, and then through what's called a habeas hearing in federal court, and eventually working its way up to the United States Supreme Court. And that can take decades. It's not like when Arizona was a territory, somebody would be found guilty, and then they would be taken behind the courthouse and hanged immediately. Because the length of time to put someone to death, it really doesn't have the deterrent effect that it used to.
So this reminds me a lot of years ago, the baseline killer, right? There's a lot of similarities about this case with what happened to Mark Goudeau.
Well, that's a great analogy. So in that case, there were 9 victims in that case, 9 deaths. And here, yes, there were 8, but there was also one that was uncharged. So there were very possibly were 9 other deaths. Now, in that case, the jury found that the death penalty applied to all 9 victims. So maybe that was the only difference, really, that and the baseline killer didn't know the victims. Here, the defendant knew all of the victims that he ended up killing.
Which, I was going to say, makes it a little bit more heinous, obviously, right?
Oh, it does, and obviously very scary for the families and those involved. And he certainly got his justice today.
Right. All right, Josh, thank you so much for that insight.
Thank you.
Troy?
Yeah, a lot of those killers on death row have been there 30 plus years, so this is not over yet.